Remember the living condition. The living condition. But the living condition. Oh. Cutty ranking. The living condition. Let me tell you about the living condition. Cutty ranking. In the morning. And we have a little Spragga Beans. She not ready yet. As she sing about she celibate. Spragga Beans. To get our juices flowing this morning. Uh-oh. Bro Diallo Show, Q4 Radio, AM 1680. Broadcasting straight out of the city of Chirac, the occupied territories of Chirac, the colonial, the urban, internalized colony of Chicago, the ethnic cleansing capital of the United States, Chirac, state of Illinois, United States of America, on the dying, late, great planet Earth. This is Bro Diallo. As I said, I wanted to get your juices flowing. So I came this Friday, y'all. So I come with a look, first Friday of the spring. Look, Spragga Beans, she not ready yet. And then the stopper to every DJ, come and talk to me proper. Cutty ranking. So I hope that woke y'all up, because I mean, it got me going. Man, 90s dance hall. Boy, let me tell you something. Anyway, this is the Bro Diallo Show, as I said before. Oh, I gotta say, you can listen live if you're in the city of Chirac, the internal urban colony. You can listen to AM 1680. You could also download the TuneIn app or the iTunes Radio app and listen to it on demand. And also q4.org, the website, anywhere in either world. Anywhere in either world, you can hear Bro Diallo Show and all of the Q4 programming at on demand. So all that, I said all that. Oh. Today is March 22nd in the year of your Lord, 2019. Now all the prep is out of the way. Let's get to the show. Hopefully, prayerfully. Yeah, I got a brother who's a devout Christian. You know, he's going to be up in heaven as I burn in hell. Willingly, enthusiastically. I am enthusiastically hellbound. Let me say that right now. I am enthusiastically hellbound. Heaven seems like a nightmare. I remember I was 12 years old, just before my baptism. And I was at Covenant Memorial Baptist Church under Reverend Gene Bowie, who was my great uncle. He was my grandmother's baby brother. He was in that pulpit throwing down. He used to have that blanket and he'd wipe his forehead as he's there. And he said, when we go to heaven, every day is going to be Sunday. We're going to have an opportunity to worship God every day. We're going to have an opportunity to thank God every day for all eternity. You're going to wake up with the prayer on your heart. You're going to go to bed with praise on your heart. Our every breath will be a spiritual, and it will be nothing but church every day, praise every day, God every day. I'm like, exit? Where is the emergency exit? I thought I was coming here just to get to heaven, and after that, it's pretty much the leash is off. The shackles are removed. I thought shackles, to me, nothing was more oppressive than having to get up on Sunday morning after getting up all Monday morning. You know, and I messed around, got myself kicked out of Southeast. Shout out to Southeast Junior High School. I have forgiven you. It's not there anymore. But when you were there, I have forgiven you. I got myself kicked out of Southeast. And so they were like, oh, Lord, the boy's going astray. Defending myself, fighting for my own personal protection. And shout out to Rip again, Terrence came through. I had to call up my posse, and we had to wreck shop for a minute. But don't front, I was scared to death. But anyway, I got myself kicked out. So they mustered together the funds to send me off to Catholic school. That's how I ended up at Bishop Hogan. Because of fighting for my life, for my own protection. So I go to Catholic school. So Monday through Friday, all this Catholic indoctrination. Like Roscoe said, I'll go to Catholic school and study under nuns and become a Catholic fool. So all week I'm trying to fight this Catholic indoctrination. Took me to my late 20s to purge that nonsense. I thought I purged it while I was still there, but it creeped back up on you. And I'll tell you something, I'm about to, Takashi on some people. That's a new verb. That's my new term for snitching. It's called Takashi. I'm about to Takashi on some people. A lot of people I went to school with at Bishop Hogan. While y'all was at school, along with me, I ain't lying, I was sipping on the 40 ounce, smoking on the blunt, left hand on the, how'd it go? Wild out, shout out, shotgun. Hand on the pump, left hand on the 40, smoking on the blunt. Yeah, I was doing all that mess y'all was doing. Grinding on these girls to this old corny-ass 90s R&B music. And everybody in that school was worldly as hell. It was my first time. A lot of these people had gone to private grade school, private junior high, private Catholic school. They had gone through Catholic. It was my first stint. Up until my freshman year of high school, I'd been in public schools, neighborhood schools, project schools. No magnet schools, no selective enrollment, none. Just wherever the neighborhood was. And, I was a wayward kid. I was homeless at parts of my childhood. So there was one year I went to like 5 different elementary schools in 1 year. So I didn't know nothing about no nice schools. I didn't know how nice schools was supposed to be. But when I got there, I found out that everybody in the Catholic school was worldly as hell. And those nuns, all those nuns, because it was a rectory and a convent right on the school campus. And those nuns would walk around so pious. And they see us doing the butt. And we'd be listening to America's Most Wanted and NWA and Bust Down and the Ghetto Boys. Gripping on That Other Level was hot, just came out. And they were the nuns, and this matters. I ain't even just reminiscing here. This ain't no drunk old man reminiscing about back in the day. This is relevant. It blows my mind. It's kind of informed my way of it has informed my methodology in revolution. Peep this. Even I had, KRS-One had come out with a Sex and Violence, an album called Sex and Violence. He wasn't KRS-One then, it was Boogie Down Production. Boogie Down Production had come out with an album called Sex and Violence. I love this album. My senior year, all I did was bump Sex and Violence, we just can't take it. Go look at the cover of that album. There was a artistic rendition of the living embodiment of sex and violence. And there is a old, disgusting, pigly capitalist man with a bikini-clad woman on his lap. And then there's this representation of war, which is this chaotic, Dali-looking, Salvador Dali-esque painting. It's a weird album cover. And I used to bump that. Back then we had Walkmans. And I went to the senior retreat at some Catholic temple, some Catholic shrine. We went to senior retreat. And I dropped my Sex and Violence CD, because we was all in there wilding out. And I dropped it, and the nun found it somewhere on the campus. And came on the school bus and said, pardon me, someone lost their Sex and Violence CD. And I'm like, I would figure they'd be outraged that such worldly music was brought into their sacred spaces. She was unfazed. All of the as Chris Marshall would say, all of the niggotry, all of the salacious behavior. And one thing, let me tell you something. Y'all think poor projects, hood kids know about drugs and sex? Let me tell you, affluent people, middle class and upper class, middle class and rich kids, you don't know drugs. If you're in the hood right now, don't even stop bragging. Stop playing your drill music thinking you know about sex and drugs. You might know a little bit more about violence. But when it comes to sex and drugs, nobody do sex and drugs more aggressively and more on a higher level than upper class people. So I come from the projects. I think me and my sister were the only two people who lived in the projects who went to this school. You know, and I went on this campus like, yeah, let me show these suckers what's really real. I get on that school campus and these dudes are wild, and I'm like, whoa. I had to be like, oh Lord, shelter me from this debauchery. But anyway, the nuns were unfazed. Now you see these movies with these nuns are so strict and they're hitting people with rulers and they're demanding your silence and demanding. The nuns were like, it's all good. It's all good. And I would always be like, are they just at peace with themselves? Why don't the nuns engage or attack this behavior? It's because they knew. They just kept every day dropping these seeds. And every single one of the wildest cats, I'm not going to say no names. I ain't going full Takashi on y'all. I'm not naming no names, but I'm Facebook friends with some of y'all Bishop Hogan graduates. Between 89, 90, 91, 92. All of y'all Bishop Hogan graduates. All of the wildest cats. The wildest chicks. The wildest dudes. They're all Christians. One dude, I went from freshman year to senior year. People used to say we look alike. We had the same high top fade haircut. And he used to cut my hair. He used to cut my fade. And he used to cut like, I used to have him cut these wild designs in my hair, like peace signs and stuff. We would hang out. We play basketball together. We crack jokes on each other. He wasn't really a friend because, I lived in the projects and he didn't. So, after school, most of the time we go our separate ways. But at school and around, we was cool. This dude was one of the wildest cats. He gave me like my first 40 I ever drank. He gave it to me. And dude, now I don't think I was really a lush. I probably drank I counted it with my son the other day. I was confessing my worldliness when I was his age. I probably drank about half a dozen times. But they really stand out in my mind because, I was, But anyway, dude was one of the wildest cats in that school. And today he is a devout Christian. And I reached out to him a few years ago. I'm like, man, what's all this you talking? He's educated. He's most pious Christian man you'd ever want to meet. And there are so many other, the wildest cats. Those seeds of Catholicism, those seeds of religiosity, those seeds of religious indoctrination were planted. And the nuns knew because they've been doing this. Those nuns were in their 80s back in the 90s. They knew. They've been doing this. They've been indoctrinating, especially black people, into Catholicism for so many years. They already knew that all these black students coming through here and making mockery, snickering, laughing at their old dusty long skirts and their funny little head scarves and all the stuff and the silly little rituals. And we'd have to go to confessionals and all that stuff. They knew. Yeah, the wildest ones, they knew that eventually that seed would cultivate into a religious drone. And I don't mean to call y'all religious drones, but y'all religious drones. You really think you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior because it's a rational choice you made independently on your own without no outside influence except for God and you? You were primed. So I'm like, oh, snap. I didn't even realize this till just a few years ago. Even in myself, into my late 20s, I was out here being militant, nationalist, radical, revolutionary, anti-white as you could get. And nobody was anti-white, anti-Eurocentricity than I was. And I still had Catholic, Christian, Judeo-Christian, Western fundamental values. I don't mean Western in terms of I wear sneakers and jeans and speak the Queen's English. That's the surface. I mean deep-seated ways of Eurocentric worldview and Eurocentric basic fundamental Eurocentric worldview and social theories. It took me to my 30s to really be like, it took me to my 30s just to identify it. Let alone, and you got to identify it before you can purge it. So, shout out to Sister Mary Pat. Shout out to Steve Dushin. Shout out to you cats. Y'all know y'all stuff, man. If I had the payroll, I'd hire y'all for counter indoctrination. I figure if y'all could implant Judeo-Christian Western values into a bunch of wild-ass black youth, I pretty much you can reverse engineer that. I'd hire you. It blows my mind. And I know I'm probably gonna lose some friends now because people think, listen, if the shoe fit, wear it. Like Khalid Muhammad said, if you throw a stone into a pack of dogs, the one that holler is the one that got hit. So any of my Bishop, and I know some people from Bishop Hogan, you listen to his. I see you. Y'all talk to me. I know. I was a cool cat. I was cool with everybody, almost just about everybody. So I know some of y'all listen to this show. Some of my and every year I make a commitment to keep in contact with my relatives. So I make my way back to Kansas City at least once a year. So, yeah, I'm talking about you. I'm Tekashi. I'm just Tekashi. And I ain't naming no names, but you can go look it up on the registry. Bishop Hogan graduates. It's a charter school now. Thank goodness. It's a secular charter school. Good riddance, because they were too good. They mean the revolution. But it gave me a good lesson in propaganda. Propaganda was started by the Catholic Church. That was the first propagate. That's evangelicalism. Repetition is the essence of propaganda. So you walk into school freshman year, and they're like, God bless you. And you're like, F off. And then the next year, God bless you. Get out of my face. The third year, God bless you. Oh, yeah, that's crap. And then the fourth year, God bless you. And God bless you too. Repetition is the essence of propaganda. And I'm telling you, I didn't even know. You don't even know it's happening. We thought, because we was out here, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, we thought it wasn't sticking. But it's not too late, all my fellow Bishop Hogan High School graduates. It's not too late. You can evangelize yourself. If you reach out to me, and I will bring you into the darkness of irrationality, out of the light of Christ into the darkness of rationality. Holla at your boy. Don't get mad. Don't unfriend me like some Hoganites. I know. I'm not going to say your names. I'll never go Tekashi. I ain't built for I'm not going to Tekashi you. I'm just saying. So anyway. I don't know why I started talking about that, but it's relevant. Anyway, let's move on. The United States was the last country in the world to ground this plane, the Boeing 737 MAX. The Boeing 737 MAX had two errors that caused the plane to go into a steep nosedive, and the pilots had completely, the AI software, the automatic pilot, took over the plane, and the pilots could not secure control of the plane, and the plane nosedived. And it was almost 200 people in Indonesia on the Indonesia Lion Air Flight 610 and the Ethiopian Air Flight 302. Both planes took a steep nosedive. And the first time it crashed was October 29th, 2018. And the plane was allowed to go. And I guess people are like, oh, those Asians, they call them yellow niggas. Don't get mad at me. It's not my word. Saying everybody under white folks is a nigga. And then we scramble who could be the least niggas under niggerdom. That's why we always fighting each other. I just had a brother tell me he mad at the Mexicans for coming to take his job. A dark-skinned black dude. Black people ain't had employment security in the United States since the end of slavery. And we got the nerve to be bickering. Generations ago, we were mad because the Irish were coming. The potatoes were coming over here taking our jobs. And then we got mad because the Italians were coming to take our jobs. And we got mad because after the fall of the Soviet Union, Ukrainians and Polacks are coming to take our jobs. And then after the Southeast Asian wars, the Hmong people and the Vietnamese, and after the Korean War, a bunch of Koreans came here and they come to take our jobs. And now it's Mexicans and Hondurans and they come to take our jobs. By now, I thought we should have figured out that they're not our jobs to be taken from us. The job don't belong to you, because if it was truly yours, you wouldn't have generations of people taking it. But I digress. Indonesia. the plane crash. Ethiopia, plane crash. Pilot error is ruled out. It is the glitch in the plane software. But the 737 Supermax is used all over the world. How come the AI, now get your tinfoil hats, everybody. Get your tinfoil hats. I'll lean back from the mic and give you a second. Put on your tinfoil hats, because I'm thinking some things about this. Now, if you go look at market share, you'll find that U.S. airlines for international flights are losing major market share. Ethiopian Airlines was one of the major carriers from the African continent. One of the most trusted and celebrated airlines. And it wasn't just an airline, or just a company. It was a source of pride for the entire Horn of Africa. And whenever they open up a new terminal, there is celebration, there is African dance, even the prime minister and all of the African dignitaries show up for the ribbon cutting. This was a evidence of Africans being industrious, Africans working with and among Africans to build an industry. The same thing with Lion Airline. Lion Airline was one of the top low-cost carriers in Asia. And there are more Asians on this planet than any other group of people. And not only is Indonesia one of the most populous countries in the world, it is the most populous Islamic country. There are more Asian Muslims than Arab Muslims. Hell, there are more African Muslims than Arab Muslims. I don't know why the Arab culture is still central to Islam if God is no respecter of person and kin to kin. But I digress. I mean, I think Islam needs another reformation. I don't know why so many non-Arab Muslims are subordinate to Arab culture and customs. But that's a whole nother discussion. I mean, if you're gonna do wrong the right way. Anyway, so these are two major competitors to U.S. international carriers. And since white folks, you know, they're gonna get the first and the long. They've been flying these Supermax for the longest, and it's just curious to me that the AI will malfunction. And then Trump obviously didn't care, because they had to literally force Trump to ground those planes. They had to force the FAA, who is under the executive branch, who is under Trump, they had to force the U.S. to ground the planes. Because the U.S. said, like, there's really nothing to worry about, calm down. They'd be like, how do we know there's nothing to worry about? And then after the U.S. didn't ground the planes, and you know how skittish Americans are. Americans are really punks. We got all these nukes. We got the biggest military. We spend $1 trillion on national security. We got at least 75 different paid spy agencies. It ain't just the CIA, FBI, NSA, BATF. We got all these agencies that are tasked with nothing but keeping punk-ass Americans safe, to protect you from threats, bumps in the night. And Americans are the most insecure, skittish, scary-ass people. And what's even more ironic, the safest people in America are the biggest cowards in America. The people who are least likely to be victims of homicide, victims of robbery, victims of police brutality, victims of ethnic or religious repression. The people who are the safest, white, heterosexual Christians, the safest people in this country, whenever they do surveys, are found to have the greatest fears. White, heterosexual, middle-class white men feel that they're the most discriminated group in America. It's crazy. So you know damn well if planes are dropping out the sky, just like 9/11, every plane in America was grounded. Not one plane, except, well, you go watch Fahrenheit 9/11, you see the Saudis were flying all over the country when Americans were grounded. But I digress. You'll find that Americans are some punks. We scared. We don't know what's suffering. We don't know struggle. We're very comfortable because we live off the blood of all other nations. The United States is a parasite nation. United States sucks the blood, sends out the military to bring, we export democracy and we import everybody's goods at below market rates. So we so cushy, we so comfortable. So I'm like, damn, you know, if the planes aren't good enough for Ethiopians, if the plane isn't good enough for Indonesians, if the plane isn't good enough to meet the standards of Africans, but Americans are flying in this plane, why won't Trump? What does Trump know that we don't know? Where he said you have nothing to fear. And guess what? Trump was right. Even though they said there was this glitch, this flaw in the American 737, Trump said keep flying. And you know Trump is a coward. There's this video of Trump at a rally. And somebody in the Trump rally said, Allahu Akbar. And Trump peed his pants and pooped his drawers. He almost passed out on stage just from somebody saying Allahu Akbar. He's in an ocean of whiteness, surrounded by the Secret Service and the bikers for Trump and all that. We're going to get more into that later. But he almost passed. They some punks. They cowards. That's why they're negotiating with North Korea. They're negotiating with China. They're negotiating with Iran. They negotiate with anybody that can fight back. They negotiate with anybody that doesn't have the capacity to fight back. They invade, like Venezuela and Afghanistan. United States is some punks. When the last time they went head up with anybody since World War II with a standing army? But I digress. Why did Indonesia, Ethiopia, and then all of the third world said we're done flying this plane? And then Ethiopia turns around and the standard practice is if you have a plane crash, you send the black box back to the manufacturer. So you send it to the NTS labs and you send it to the Boeing labs so that they can do an evaluation and get back to you and say this is what went wrong with the plane. Ethiopia was like, hell to the no. We ain't sending this to America because we think America will lie about what happened. We're going to send this off to our allies in Europe, and I don't know why the Ethiopians think the Europeans are more trustworthy than the Americans, but it still says something. So could it be, tinfoil hat time? Now I don't have the facts to back this up, but I'm speculating. I'm putting together, I'm connecting the dots, I'm getting my Alex Jones on. That U.S. corporations, especially airline, multinational corporations, were struggling to compete on the international market because everybody hates America because of our freedoms. It's not the bombs. It's not the violating of sovereignty. It's not the rape of resources. Everybody hates America because we're so free in America. That the United States was like, listen, we need to send a subtle message out to our foreign competitors. And let's pick two of the most trusted, most celebrated foreign airline conglomerates, and boop, I'm just saying, I don't put it past you. You put it past America? It's just something about that. And it really hit me when Trump was like, we're not grounding the 737s. When literally every other country said we're going to ground these planes until we can do proper diagnostics to find the problem. And Trump was like, it's all good. Y'all ain't got nothing to worry about. Quit crying. Cool and relax. Take a step. Take 10 paces back. And Trump is a coward. Trump is a scary coward. He will talk. Remember Trump talk all that stuff about he was going to take over the Middle East. He was going to solve the Middle East crisis in a week, and he's going to bomb them to hell and drop the mother of all bombs. He talked all that stuff, and he got on a plane and went to Saudi Arabia. Him and Steve Bannon looked shook. Go back and look at the tapes. They were shook. Trump was swinging sabers and doing dance, and Trump was assalamu alaikum and eating falafels. He was doing everything they told him to do the whole time he was in the Middle East. All that talk of terrorists and say Islamic terrorists and all that talk was done. When he was in their house, he was a lamb. And they cook and eat lambs in the Middle East. And remember, he went to North Korea, same thing. Oh, I love Kim Jong-il. Little Rocket Man, talking all this stuff. I'll bomb, I'll obliterate the North Koreans, talking all this stuff. And then when he's face to face, oh, hello, Kim. Oh, Trump's a punk. He's a coward. Most bullies are cowards. I haven't met a non-cowardly bully. Now, I know some real killers. I know personally some real killers. I'm not Tekashi, but I'm telling you, they're always kind of laid back, cool guys. I've never met a gangster who acts gangster. I've never met that. I never met a hard, raw gang. I've never, in my life. Now, there might be some hard acting, some gangster behaving gangsters. Gangsters, when they're gangstering. Then they go home and put on slippers and eat vanilla ice cream. Who can gangster 24/7? Your arteries, your heart can't take that. So anybody that acts, usually tough actors, I know some cats that can throw down. And if you're day to day with them, you around them, they pretty low key. Or like Harris once said, real bad boys move in silence. Or like Lil Wayne said, real G's move in silence like lasagna. My wife is very impressed being an English major. She's very internet's trying. Oh, my YouTube dropped. Oh, there's a little. Throw that in the speculation box. Put your tinfoil hat back on. I get to talk about the 737 Max and my speculations. The fact that the U.S. didn't ground the plane and Ethiopia said we're not sending our black box to the U.S. laboratories because we don't trust y'all to tell the truth. My feed dropped on YouTube. I think I got it back, but yo, put your tinfoil back. Keep your tinfoil hat on for the whole show. I don't even think. I thought I was immune. I thought I was so conscious that I was immune to the rays. But I'm about to bring my tinfoil hat into the studio. I figured being in the studio would protect me. But hey, y'all, I'm trying to move on from this topic. Here they come. Anyway, let's get to some other issues. Let's stick on Trump for a little longer. Trump stands for nothing except enriching Trump. We know that. But Trump is an idiot. Now, I would be content to sit back and let Trump economically rape and raid the U.S. Treasury. I don't care. It's fiat. I have other objectives and other priorities more so than sustaining the U.S. status quo. So I would be content to sit back and say, Trump, rob America. Get your grind on. Steal and bring in your incompetent children, your incompetent in-laws, and y'all go ahead and raid the barn. That's what I mean. White folks put and voted you in. You're a pathological liar. White people seem to lack the capacity for collective shame. If Obama was behaving this way, black people would be apologize. It would be a deep sense of shame to overcome the whole black community because we have that connection. But white folks seem to be able to go in the voting booth, vote for a scum of the earth, and then walk out, well, it's not my fault, I never owned a slave. I mean, whatever a lame white excuse I have, just put it down. But Trump is not just content with robbing the country blind and enriching himself. It seems he's just not content with that. Actually, he is content with that, but he's too damn stupid to know what the hell he's doing. Trump does a lot of seemingly contradictory things. Remember when Kim Kardashian came to Trump and said, release this prisoner, this woman who was given life for a first-time nonviolent drug offense, and Trump was like, I'm going to free her. I'm a champion for the imprisoned. And then he turned right around and negotiated with private prison companies and allowed them to set up private prison camps and make billions of dollars over mass incarceration of refugees. So those are two polar opposite sides. He takes two. And remember, Trump, up until the time he started running for president, was off and on. He was a Democrat. He was a member of the Democratic Party. He was even a member of the Libertarian Party. He was never a member of the Republican Party. And you go and look at his campaign donations, he had always given more money to the Democrats than the Republicans. And he's even on record, I think he was talking to Phil Donahue or somebody, where he said if I ever run, or Sally Jeffrey Raphael, one of those daytime talk people, he said if I ever ran for president, I'd run as a Republican because the Republican voters are stupid and they're much easier to manipulate. But if I tried to run as a Democrat, there'd be too much scrutiny. And with all of this, white people are like, yeah, Trump, MAGA. And Dale Jones like, how did these people ever defeat us? How do these people hold us in bondage? How? It's because they kill game is on. I might not know my ABCs, but I know DIE. They kill you. But anyway, so if Trump was content to rob America blind, I'd pretty much mind my business. My name, I'm poor. I'm a poor black man. The money games that they play up there, the money manipulations that they do up there, it doesn't trickle down. Trickle down is a lie. Y'all think, well, if the economy's doing good, I do well. Under capitalist economies, let's quote Noam Chomsky, under capitalist economy, the health of the economy has no direct correlation to the health of the society. They're two separate things. In fact, they're two oppositional things. So I don't care if he's robbing other rich people, because he can't rob me. I have nothing to take. So if he's out there doing scams on other rich and he's robbing rich white people and shaking down foreign leaders, and you know, doing economic favors for Putin and MDS, whatever. That is not even. It'd be like Trump tripping off of my, you know, my eggplants that I'm growing in my garden. That ain't got nothing to do with Trump. I'm gonna grow my organic eggplants here on the south side, and you're gonna rob the country. Okay, you do you. I do me. But there's a problem. There are things that Trump is doing that is trickling down to the rest of us. And like I said, he stands for nothing. Trump will do anything for anybody if it's self-serving. He was like, I'd love to have a photo op with Kim K. And he probably got a little more than that. You better chickadee check. Kanye, you better check Kim. You know, Trump, has a history of sexual assault. But he also says that he's one of the best lovers. He sent a press release to some tabloid saying that he had sex with a model, and the model said it was the best sex of her life. And Kim, I don't know. I don't think, you know, who knows? I don't know. I wouldn't trust Kim or Trump. I don't trust either of them. But Kanye, you better chickadee check. I don't know what she did to get that concession. But Trump felt it was self-serving. He wanted to be with an A-list celebrity. He wanted to trend on Twitter and Instagram. So he did it. They say literally Trump opinion changes from moment to moment depending on who's around him and who he talks to. But there's a serious issue. Trump has a friend called Benjamin Netanyahu. And this man is a genocidal Zionist. A genocidal Zionist. And he's been basically checking off a wish list. He's been checking off a wish list for Netanyahu since he took office, which is weird, which is very weird. Netanyahu is Jewish, and we often hear this accusations that Trump is a neo-Nazi, Trump is a fascist, Trump is a racist. And we know for a fact that the neo-Nazis, the white nationalists, and the racists love Trump. But we also know that the Nazis, the neo-Nazis, I don't like that term neo-Nazi, but I think Nazis were neo-Americans. That would be more accurate. The genocidal campaign that the Nazis carried out in Germany was patterned on the genocidal campaign that the United States of America carried out against the Native Americans and Africans. So the Nazis are neo-Americans. Americans can't be neo-Nazis. You could just call them America. Because America should be synonymous with genocide and racism. It should be as synonymous, if not more, as Nazi. So by calling someone American, you're calling them a genocidal racist. You don't need to say you're a Nazi or a Nazi American or a neo-Nazi. Just saying American is enough. Because America, from the tip of Canada down to Chile, southern Chile, the tip of South America, an orgy of ongoing genocide and enslavement and white supremacist racism. I don't understand how we let them play these word tricks with us. Trump is a Nazi. No, Trump is not a Nazi. Trump is an American. And that should be enough. But again, we sit there and believe George Washington could not tell a lie. So, but anyway, Trump, because I got to speak y'all language, Trump is a Nazi. And we know that the Nazis, the nationalists, the racists hate the Jews. So how do you have a man who is the king of the rednecks, the king of the neo-Nazis, the king of white nationalists, and then the first president in over a generation to get on TV and say, I'm a nationalist? How do you have him at the same time sucking on the toes of the Jewish prime minister, of the Israeli Zionist prime minister? How can you be the champion of the white racist and your daughter, your most beloved daughter, whom you've expressed inappropriate intentions and feelings for? Say if she wasn't your daughter, you bang her brains out or something. Wow, wow, wow. How is she married to an Orthodox Zionist Jew? Now, I'm not saying I think everybody, I'm like the rest of you, everybody should love everybody, but everybody don't love everybody, so it's something ain't lining up. I'm not dealing with things how they should be. I'm dealing with things as they are. If you're a hater, what's wrong? Why is your hate so inconsistent? It must mean a few things can only line up. Because if you go, which I do, I never comment, I just go to creep, I just go to spy. I never comment, I never engage. But I go to these white nationalists, 4chan, Stormfront. I go and see what the white folks are up to. I've been doing this since I found out about the internet. Just like 94, I've been looking at this stuff. And they all say something very consistent. They're not even consistent on black folks. You would even go there and find on racist websites where they will, especially there's a lot of anarcho-racist who they hate the police. They hate the apparatus of the state. They believe that the state is oppressive. So they'll even acknowledge police brutality and they'll stand in some type of warped solidarity of black people in our opposition to the police. Go look. You'll even find somewhere that some of these racist websites, they'll acknowledge the work ethic of Mexicans. Like, yeah, their Mexicans work hard. They like the Mexicans because the Mexicans have been indoctrinated like I was by the Catholics. So they have these family values and be fruitful and multiply. You even find white nationalists that will give begrudging respect to the blacks, to the Mexicans, to the Asians, the chinks, and that they call them, and the spics and the niggers. You'll find that they will, from time to time, on white nationalist websites, acknowledge some of our complaints are legitimate. You will find that they will even acknowledge that we do have some qualities that could be admired. And they'll say, I'm not a racist, I'm a separatist. That's a new thing. I don't hate anybody. I just want my own people amongst my own people, and I want your people to go amongst your people. And I don't got nothing against no blacks. I ain't got nothing. I just want my country for my people. You go back to your country for your people. But one thing you find that they never budge on, they never have no level of respect, no level of acknowledgement, is Zionist or the Jews. They say they have no redeeming qualities. They believe that America is under the Zog, that America is a Zionist occupied government, that foreign interests, Jewish foreign interests, and they blame the Jews everything from World War I and World War II to the expansion to interracial relationships. They believe that the Jews, through Hollywood, is promoting homosexuality, promoting race mixing, and everything they hate. They hate the Jews, but they love Trump, who does everything the Jews tell him to do, or the Zionists. I know some people get mad. You say the Jews, and they're like, well, there's a lot of Jews. There's anti-Zionist Jews, there's black Jews, there's Ethiopian Falasha Jews. Right. So I'll try to be accurate with the terminology because I don't want no twit storm on me. Y'all know what I'm saying, but I guess I got to say what I'm saying instead of just assuming y'all know what I'm saying. Can I just have a small digression? The Chicago Sun-Times put up a couple of pictures of young Prep Winkle and young Lori Lightfoot. They was cute. Before their souls got corrupted by Democratic politics, Lori was cute. Prep Winkle was kind of cute. They look like the two girls. Now go look it up on the Chicago Sun-Times. In-depth profiles of Lori Lightfoot and Toni Preckwinkle. And tell me they don't look like the two girls that starred in House Party. The first House Party with Kid and Play. I don't remember the girls' names, but they were the dark-skinned and the light-skinned girl from House Party. Go look it up and tell me they don't look just like they could have played them roles. But I digress. Back to the serious business. So, it's a curious thing. In order for this relationship, this twisted relationship for the king of the clowns, the king of the white nationalists, what time is it on? I need to be more respectful of time. But anyway, I continue to digress. How the hell can the Zionists and the Nazis root for and work with and love the same guy and be allied with the exact same people? There's only a few ways. The Zionists have the same value systems as the Nazis. The Zionists have common cause or common interests with the Nazis. That's pretty much it. What's the number 3? Is Zionism racist? Yes. Is Zionism genocidal? Yes. Is Zionism a supremacist ideology that's saying that God or nature put one group of people over other people? Yes. So as much as they hate each other, you got people in your family, right? And they're just alike, and they don't get along. You got an uncle and a cousin, a father and a son. My wife says this all the time with me and my youngest son. You got 2 people who are so much alike they just can't get along with each other. And when you're in a room with these 2 people in separate rooms, you're like, I can't tell the difference. They talk alike, they move alike, especially if it's a younger or an older person. And I get this. I'm always like my younger son. Boy, what's wrong with you, boy? Say, what are you doing? We always had these back and forths, these tete-a-tetes. This is the other day, my son was walking downstairs, and I told him, boy, you don't know me. And he was like, I know you. I know every move you make. I know you better than you know yourself. I'm like, damn, I didn't even have a comeback for that. That was kind of scary on some Chucky type, Children of the Corn type response. So I was like, okay. I just went back to watching TV. So you have it, and people, my sister, my older sister, my grandmother, my wife, they always like, you and this boy. And people that knew me when I was young, they were like, this boy is just like you. I'm like, I don't see it. I was never that horrible. And then my son say, I'll never be that old and crotchety. So they don't see it because they too much alike. You look in the mirror, you don't even recognize your reflection. And it's generally with somebody older or younger. It's generally with somebody. I have an aunt, a great aunt, and my great grandfather are just alike. They look alike, their head is shaped alike, they have the same stubborn disposition, and they just couldn't get along. They were like, and they would always be at each other. And everybody said they don't get along because they're just alike. I think that's the thing. Nazism is old. It's the father of Zionism. I said it here first. And y'all go call the Anti-Defamation League and anybody else. Call me anti-Semitic. Call me whatever you want to call me. But I'll say it again. If there was no Nazism, there will be no Zionism. Now, Zionism is an old ideology. It existed well before the Nazis. Theodor Herzl, the atheist, conceptualized this long before. But the Nazi atrocities is what allowed the political will, the economic support, the military support, the political will, and the international sympathy for the Zionists to be able to pull this. Before that, even most Jews didn't support Zionism. The vast majority of Jews, just like the vast majority of black people didn't support Garvey. A lot of black people supported Garvey, but not enough. So, but people, when they supported Zionism, they didn't know that the Zionists would go and adopt the behaviors of the Nazis. Supremacism. And they went to Zion. Israel is an apartheid country. You don't like me saying it? I could bring a whole laundry list of Jewish scholars, of Jewish rabbis, and other Jewish people who meet all your Jewish credentials, since I'm here as a Goyim, if I'm sitting here as a Gentile who supposedly don't know nothing. Everything, all my conclusions about Israel and the Zionist project come from Israelis and Zionists. They confess their own crimes. They already articulated their intentions. So even though the Nazis and the Jews hate each other, they have so much one of the reasons is they have so much in common. You literally have white imperialists complaining about Jews conspiring to take over the world. And I'm like, if Jews are going to conspire to take over the world, they have to take it from you because you already took over the world. So how the hell can you be mad at the Zionists for trying to take over the world when you currently have possession of the world? Unless you're saying the Jews are trying to take possession of the world from me and you don't deserve to hold possession of the world. What they say, strange bedfellows? There are more Christian Zionists than Jewish Zionists. The Christian Zionist movement in the United States is more militantly in favor of Zionism than the Jewish Zionists in Israel. The Israeli media and the Israeli press and newspapers are more critical of the government and policies of Israel than the U.S. press. The U.S. gives more economic and military aid to the country of Israel than the entire continent of Africa or many other countries all combined. Strange bedfellows. So at the same time, the United States has anti-Semitism. The United States has more and more Nazi-esque, anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic organizations, has an anti-Semitic, white nationalist, racist president. At that same time, their support for Israel has never been stronger. Walking contradiction. Why? It has a lot to do with evangelical end-time prophecies. You know, America is literally like, oh, I hate you, here's $1 billion. I can't stand you, here's a missile system. It is a toxic relationship. There's no way this makes any kind of sense. And when Bibi Netanyahu had 3 priorities, his 3 top priorities was ending the Iranian nuclear agreement to end sanctions on Iran so that Iran could build its economy, because Iran is one of the strongest oppositions to the Greater Israel Project. And the Greater Israel Project is that Israel wants to take all of Palestine and then expand and encroach into surrounding territories. And the number one stopgap, the number one threat to total Israeli dominance of the so-called Middle East is Iran. Because the Egyptians are bought and paid for it. The Egyptians are the Uncle Toms of the Middle East, and they are totally under the thumb of the Israelis. The Saudis, do I gotta say it? The Saudis, they were like, keep me paid, and the Saudi royal families are selling out their own people, their own fellow Muslims throughout the Middle East, and all they say is keep me paid, keep my $1 trillion in the Swiss banks secure, and I'll let Israel and the United States have their way with all of the Middle East. All I want to do is spread Wahhabism and get paid. So the only nations that were standing up against the Greater Israel Project was Afghanistan, Iraq, and Iran. We know what happened to the first 2. So Iran was the last country to stand up and say, nah, you're not going to come here and play Nazi. You're not going to come here and use the legacy of the Holocaust to come and play Nazis and bring about colonialism, white domination, and genocide across the Middle East. We're not having it. And so they were like, one of the ways to stop this is that they wanted the U.S. because Israel could not go head up with Iran without U.S. support. So when the U.S. under Barack Hussein, insane, Uncle Tom, race trader Obama, when he did that, a good thing, I acknowledge even when a broken clock is right twice a day, he went and negotiated. They were scared as hell. So he wanted to dissolve the treaty. He wanted the United States to violate the treaty. And if you know anything about U.S. constitutional law, treaties have precedence even over the Constitution. So now the United States is in a position that no other country, especially, listen to me, African nations, treaties, contracts with America mean nothing. They're toilet paper. And his number 2 priority was to move the capital from Tel Aviv, the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And you had all these, because I never thought there would be a more pro-Zionist president than Barack Obama. I didn't think anybody could pass due to the level of bowing and capitulation to the Zionist agenda than Obama. But Trump surprised me. He's out bombing Obama, and he's out pandering to the Zionists more than Obama, which is saying a lot, because he went hard in the paint. Even though they hate his gut, he went hard in the paint for Israel. So that's the number 2 priority. Moving and Obama wouldn't move the embassy. Bill Clinton wouldn't move the embassy. George Bush wouldn't move the embassy. Carter wouldn't. All these pro-Zionist presidents saying that's going too far. Trump's like, let's move it. They already broke ground. And he sent his Zionist son-in-law to do it. And his number 3 priority was to annex the Golan Heights. And let me tell you something. Annexation of the Golan Heights is the precursor to World War III. Since the world post-World War II international codes and laws, they made it a law for any nation to expand its territory through military conquest. Meaning, if you invade a nation and take any part of its territory through military means, the rest of the world community will not recognize your hold or presence in that territory. The Golan Heights were invaded, belonged to Syria. Israel invaded and took possession of the Golan Heights and will not relinquish control back of that sovereign territory back to Syria. And so every nation from that day, what was it, 1960? Since the 1960s. Don't hold me to the date, look it up. No nation in the world has recognized Israel's right to be there, right to hold that territory, and every nation, every UN signatory has says, Israel, you will have to vacate the Golan Heights and turn it back over to the sovereign nation that the heights belong to. And Israel, of course, being the criminal nation, said, middle finger to you. And so now the United States recognizing Israel's right to the Golan Heights isn't just them stealing that bit of geography. It means that the whole concept that a nation cannot expand their borders through military conquest is defunct. It's null and void. So remember when Russia annexed Crimea and everybody was like, oh, Trump, Putin is the new Hitler. Putin is an imperialist. Oh, how could he do such a horrible thing? Well, now annexation. More powerful nations can go and just take territory. Boom. And also, the Syrians, with the help of the Russians, are now like, yo, we're about to restabilize. And they knew it wasn't ISIS that invaded and tried to topple their country. They knew it was NATO, the NATO nations, that did it. And it's going to be payback time. So Israel is provoking the U.S. to lay the groundwork for World War III. Israel has never had a better friend, and the world has never been closer to the brink of World War III than this time. And y'all still running around talking about he's a white nationalist, he's a neo-Nazi, he's a neo-Zionist. He's done more deliberately for the Zionist, racist Zionist agenda than he's done for the white nationalist agenda. For the white rednecks in America, all he's done is give them lip service while he picks their pockets. I mean, damn. But anyway, my time is running out, so I'm going to move on. I can't move on without talking about this. Africa is under a climate disaster. On March 4th, Cyclone Ida came, and up to this point, since March 4th, they said the death count is at 600. And the reason the death count is at 600 is many of the relief agencies can't get access to certain parts of East Africa Southeast Africa to really do an accurate body count. So they anticipate the body count from East Africa will spread beyond 600. Right now, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Malawi, and Madagascar are the main countries affected by the flooding, the cyclone, and the flooding and the aftermath. Over 2.6 million Africans in Southeast Africa have been affected by the storm, have been displaced, rendered homeless, or have lost property or loved ones due to the storm. And Malawi and Zimbabwe are two of the poorest nations, not just in Africa, but in the world. So you got this extreme poverty as a direct result of colonization and economic exploitation. So they're in a much more difficult position to recover from the storm. And all of that to boot, they're saying that the people are saying, I don't know because I don't consume corporate media, but I've been hearing accusations that the corporate media is not covering the fallout of Cyclone Idea. So this is something we should watch. I know we know better than to give to the Red Cross or anything. What I would say is now with the advent of social media and WhatsApp, you can actually contact people on the ground in Africa, reach out via social media and try to find on the ground organizations. If you want to volunteer, send monetary or material support, try to find Zimbabweans, brothers and sisters in Madagascar, Malawians, Mozambicans. Try to find people on the ground doing the work. During the when the Ebola crisis returned to West Africa, we were able to contact through Busani people directly on the ground and deal with fund drives to put resources directly in the hands of the people instead of going through these middleman organizations that rob Africa and Haiti and other places. So if you're going to help, the main countries that are most directly affected again are Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Malawi, and Madagascar. In the 2018 global survey, Mozambique and Malawi were found to be part of the top 10 or even top 5 poorest nations in the world in terms of per capita income. So they really need whatever support the people. And also, even if you don't have the ability to support, there's a lot of good reporting and images. Let the world know. Let's make this story go viral. You know, I mean, I've been seeing a lot of that Daniel Caesar stuff all over the internet. You know, so if you got time, if we have time to talk about stupid ass Daniel Caesar and his stupid ass Canadian comments, we should be able to share and make sure this ongoing crisis remains within the consciousness of the community. So please get the stories out, share the links, share the images. If you find any validated on the ground black sources of support and relief, please, but avoid giving to the Red Cross, avoid supporting any of the UN efforts there, because we know that UN, when they come in to rescue you, they rescue you by colonizing you. So let's develop our own disaster networks, because this is just the beginning. And there will be a time coming very soon where there will be a dozen or more Katrinas going on across the United States with climate change. But let's just look at climate change in Africa and or what we can expect on the African continent, our brothers and sisters to endure in our motherland. So global warming in Africa, I mean, there's agencies from the UN to the NASA and other global scientific agencies that look at weather charts and weather patterns that anticipate. They have these huge supercomputers that run these scenarios. They put in the data, and they found that in the next between now and 2050, that there will be in Northeast Africa expanding aggressive desertification, meaning that the desert will expand, which will the topsoil will be lost, greenery will lost, species will be lost. There will be a rise in sea level in Madagascar and other coastal regions. And when you have a rise in sea levels and seawater, that means there's less fresh water. The freshwater sources become contaminated, or they call salinization. where fresh water sources not only don't become drinkable, they do not become used for industry because the salt water is too corrosive to machinery and things of that nature. So desalinization, not just thirst, not just a drop in drinking water in crops, but also a great disruption to any type of fledgling or advanced industries on the African continent. There will be an increase in frequency and power of cyclones in mainly West Africa, deforestation in sub-Saharan Africa, and when you have deforestation, you always have a steep drop in biodiversity and mass extinction, loss of the woodlands, also in Central and Sub-Saharan Africa, coral bleaching, again on West Africa and southern regions of Africa, which is in another habitat. When you have coral bleaching, you also lose biodiversity, which is a total collapse of the food web, which also leads to mass extinctions and starvation and political strife, and also an expansion of malaria and other tropical diseases will spread to regions they hadn't properly existed, and ultimately a drop in food security for a continent that has a expanding population. These are all factors of climate change. And I know you might be like, hey, it's about to be tough for everybody. You know, we got Kentucky, Nebraska, Missouri's underwater. We got it's hard for everybody, but it's not. It's worse. Climate change is a greater injustice than Africa, than in the rest of the world. And here's why. Global warming is driven by carbon emissions. That's it. And they've known this since the 1900s. I have a copy of an article. I think I'll post that to Instagram today. They knew about global warming and carbon emissions over 100 years ago, and they did nothing but go ahead more aggressive. The continent of Africa, one of the largest continuous land masses, which one of the largest populations in the world, has only contributed 2 to 3% of global carbon emissions. 2 to 3%. Right? The average African individual living on the African continent emits 0.8 metric tons per person of carbon. That's your so-called carbon footprint. Less than 1% per African. Less than 1 metric ton per. And see, well, 0.08 metric tons of carbon, that's a lot. The global average for carbon emission is 3.9 metric tons per individual. 3.9. But forget about the individuals. What are we doing in the United States? The average American emits 15.53 metric tons of carbon. Americans have the largest carbon footprint of any other population in the world. Less than 5% of the global population, and over a quarter of all carbon emissions come out of the United States. The most gluttonous, wasteful, polluting society in the world, United States. If you live in the United States, especially as a black person, and you want to help Africans, before you give money, before you send materials, the first thing you can do is reduce your carbon footprint. And that alone will put you in cultural and material solidarity with the suffering people who are suffering catastrophes that they did not cause. And let me tell you something. Like we said, Africans, 0.8 metric tons. Global average, 3.9 metric tons. The U.S. average, 15.53 metric tons of emissions. And these are U.S. standards. I didn't go to some anti-American. I got this from the U.S. federal government, the CDC and NASA, their stats. The EPA, America, this came from the United States. You know if they're gonna lie in favor of America and against Africa. So I stand by this. But there's another little caveat. If you adopt a vegan lifestyle, you go 100% vegan, you reduce your carbon footprint down to 1. If you live in the first world. Every time I make a post about vegan, somebody jumps on the post talking about, Kenyan herdsmen, nomadic Twa people. They jump on there and talk about, the Inuit people in the Arctic. I'm like, when I post stuff online, I'm pretty much sure I'm talking about people in the United States in generally the first world. When I'm talking about who's causing the problems. They love to talk about it, and I've never had an Inuit or a Twa or a Maasai herdsman come and tell me about, and argue with me about veganism or living ecologically. But it's always people that use them as evidence to justify their BS, their carbon footprint. What I'm saying is, if you adopt a total vegan lifestyle, even if you still drive a Hummer, even if you taking a private jet to Curacao to party for spring break, if you simply adopt a 100% vegan lifestyle, you reduce your carbon footprint from, on average, 15.3 metric tons of carbon emitted a year down to 1.5 tons of carbon emission. Nothing lowers your carbon footprint more directly and drastically than adopting a vegan diet and vegan lifestyle and everything else you do. So I'm real talk. This ain't even about your health. Oh, I just want to be in peace. No, this is about survival of the human species at this point. If you live in an industrialized first world nation, and you really, before you come to me and talk about justice, climate justice, or any other type of justice for the third world, or solidarity for the third world, and you ain't adopted a vegan diet, I got questions. And I'm skeptic as hell. But I gotta go. I want to talk about Barcelona. I'm running out of time. Let's talk about guerrilla warfare. There was a time I took where I was intensely studying guerrilla warfare. And it was back in the 90s, because I came across this book. There was this book called Civil War II, The Coming Breakup of America, written by this guy named Thomas Chittum. And Thomas Chittum was a U.S. soldier, and after he was a U.S. soldier, he became a mercenary. And as a mercenary, he went to places to help during the anti-colonial wars in Africa. A lot of white men, a lot of white veterans went to Africa to fight on the sides of the white people who were trying to maintain their colonies, because it paid well. So this white man who wrote Civil War II, he went to Rwanda. He went to Rhodesia. I'm sorry. He went to Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe, to fight to help keep the white people in power over the Africans. He also went to the former Soviet nation during the Balkan Wars. So I would hear, when I was living in Missouri, I was going to gun shows. I was listening to right-wing talk radio. And this guy back in the early 90s and mid-90s was really popular. And they were always recommending this book, among other books. And I always thought to myself, it's bullcrap. This is some utter bullcrap. Civil War II, this is more white-ring militia hysteria. But then I went to this gun show and they said, Thomas Chittum would be speaking. And so I went into, because, it's like a conference. They have all the gun tables, but they have these booths where these guys are giving this talk. And he was selling his book. And I listened to his talk, and I'm like, wow, this guy's making a lot of freaking sense. So I bought the book. And when I bought the book at the table, he asked me, would I like him to sign it? And I told him, no, screw you. I don't want you to sign anything. But I don't know if the book is still available. Civil War II, The Coming Breakup of America. I'm not sure if it's still available. But this guy, he's a racist. He's a white nationalist. He's even a colonizer, and not just a colonizer because he inherited the colony, because he actively engaged into building up and sustaining the colonies of Africa. But another thing that he is his mind is oriented toward conflict. He has voluntarily lived a life engaged in armed military conflict. So in this book, he started pointing out the various conditions and characteristics for a breakdown in America that would cause various factions in America to take up arms and engage in yet another civil war. And you see on the cover, he has foreign journalists coming to the United States. They look Asian, very aggressively Asian phenotype. And there's some white boys on a burnt out tank holding a Confederate flag. And so I'm like, damn, this book has some validity. As Bobby E. Wright said, black people have never been safe in this country. Generally, white aggression manifests in isolated pockets. You know, a brother gets shot here, a family gets their home burnt there, there's a lynching there, but every now and then white people would organize themselves into large enough mobs to burn down entire black towns, which has happened literally hundreds of times. They'll take out a whole black community. So when the conditions are right, they're like grasshoppers versus locusts. The grasshoppers, they eat your crops. But sometimes they morph into a giant ravenous mob where they can take out whole large territories instead of individuals. And there's time when the racists are content to destroy black people on an individual level, family by family, person by person. But sometimes they want to wipe out whole populations. Now this has been happening overseas. They've been getting over their bloodlust. So then I started looking into what could black people do being a minority. This is Mao Zedong on guerrilla warfare. And the classic, probably the most popular book ever written, the Guerrilla Warfare Bible, Che Guevara, Guerrilla Warfare. And another one that I think people should read, because this doesn't talk about the tactics of guerrilla warfare. It talks about the day-to-day lives of guerrillas, how they live, their ideology, how the movements came, and you know, the interpersonal relationships. And I have another book that was stolen. I ain't gonna say stolen. I limped out and didn't give it back. So it went from being voluntarily given to stolen. And I'm not going Takashi. But every time I'm in Brooklyn, whenever I go to New York, there's an opportunity for you to return my damn book, and you never do. But there's a book called The War of the Flea. And there's another book I have at home that I didn't want to bring out because it's kind of tattered. It's kind of in tatters, and I don't like taking out. I got some old books that I don't like. You know, one by Jomo Kenyatta and one by Kwame Nkrumah. Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare. Facing Mount King. I got a couple of books I didn't want to bring, but I have a lot of books on guerrilla warfare, War of National Liberation, which is another book that I couldn't find. I mean, when you get so many books, every time I need to organize my books, because I just have to dig through all the shelves and look everywhere. And sometimes I look up and find the book I'm looking for. Other times I don't. But after I read a book the first time, it goes on the shelf and it gets caught up in the whirlwind. But as Bobby E. Wright said, we've never been safe in this country. Since the first European reached these shores, there hasn't been a day where atrocity has not been committed. In 400 years, before the United States was even formed into a confederacy, before it even had formal colonies, they came here with the intent for mass slaughter. And they've never stopped. And every day we look at the media, every day we dwell in this society, we see that the white majority has taken upon itself through legal, through state, through personal, individual, through cultural means to have a superior amount of weapons and the superior will and capacity to kill other people. Right now in the city of Chicago, they talk about Chicago violence. In the city limits, you cannot buy a slingshot in this city. You cannot, as a law-abiding citizen, you cannot live, and I'm not exaggerating because I went to buy slingshots in this city. We were doing this slingshot shootout. And I went to purchase a slingshot. And I went to all the same sports stores, the Dick's Sporting Goods store, and all the other sporting goods stores in the city. Couldn't find it. I had to drive all the way out to Bolingbrook, Illinois, completely out of the city limits. And I went to a Bass Pro Shop, and I found slingshots, I found blow darts, I found shotguns and pistols and assault rifles all on display. And all these white people just buying all these nerdy, Sketcher, croc wearing white people, they're all heavily arming themselves. Even the congressman talking about we got 1 trillion bullets. For who? For what? Nobody's bothering the United States. The only people that are coming here on the southern border are people that are victims of your imperialism. And the United States military knows that the moment that they stop with the imperialism, the people not only stop coming here, they go home. I mention this every time. When the Lavalas movement moved to power in Haiti, and when there was a liberation theology that rose up in Haiti in the 90s under the George Bush and Bill Clinton administration, when a progressive president came to power, and this was during a time where they had the Haitian boat people, and that's when all the Haitians got AIDS. They're bringing AIDS to America. And they were letting Haitians drown off the coast of Florida because they wouldn't let them come in the country, and they were floating on anything. And then when Aristide won a democratic election following all white folks' rules for democracy, Haitians not only stopped coming here, many Haitians who had made it here, set their lives up here, packed up and said, I'm going back home. And they knew it. And Bill Clinton went there and sent the Marines and toppled the Haitian government, oversaw a coup d'etat and kidnapped the president. And then all of a sudden, here come the Haitians back on the Haitian boat people. Here they come again. And then all these Haitians coming to our country, taking our jobs. These goddamn ADOS, here they come to replace us. The Honduran refugee crisis. The Obama administration, led by Hillary Clinton, committed a coup d'etat in Honduras. That's why the Hondurans are coming here. No other reason. Because you destabilize their country. If you're anti-immigration, you better be anti-imperialism. And imperialism is what drives immigration, refugees, legal and illegal immigration. So y'all lying, y'all talking out both sides of your neck. Same thing with Mexico. Ross Perot, a little white racist man who got no love for Mexicans, told the truth. He said if you pass NAFTA, North American Free Trade Zone, if you pass GATT, General Agreement on Tariffs, if you unleash the World Bank and the IMF on Central America, Latin America, South, if you unleash them, the Mexicans are going to come here. We're going to send our cheap commodities and our cheap manufactured goods to them, and they're going to send their agricultural workers and no-skilled laborers to us. He said it. And the racist white people went and voted for the policies that guaranteed that there would be an immigration crisis. And you implement and support policies that drive legal and illegal immigration, and then you sit there and cry about legal and illegal immigration. And black people got the nerve to sit there alongside the white rednecks and talk this nonsense about coming into our country. If the United States had allowed for the formation of a Caribbean Federation, had allowed the socialists to come to power, and had not subverted economic sovereignty of the Caribbean and the drive for unification of the Caribbean islands, there wouldn't be all these Trinidad, Ghanaian, Yardman. You wouldn't have all these foreigners. Now, I don't mind the foreigners. I don't give a damn. I don't respect no damn borders. I'm a revolutionary. What the hell I look like respecting colonial, genocidal borders? So I'm not even talking this for my own interest. I'm saying for you people who claim you're against immigration. You don't want people to come take your job. For y'all not acting in your interest. The activities I take, the lifestyle I live is consistent with my values and my agenda. But you have a counter values and counter agendas, and your actions directly contradict that. But anyway, long story short, we are under the foot of heavily armed idiots. These white nationalists, these militia members, these patriotic Americans, these evangelical Christians, the Mormons, A bunch of insane, heavily armed, violent people with a history of genocide and murder and racism surround every black community. Just like with Hurricane Katrina, most of the black people that died did not die in the initial flooding, in the initial storm. They died because the black people were trying to get out of the flood zones, and the white people who surround New Orleans, the rural white communities, cut off their ability to leave and stood at bridges, stood at ramps, at highway exit ramps with shotguns. American citizens and paid militia members from Blackwater militia were standing there and told the black people to go back towards the storm, towards the flood. Right now, when you talk about Chicago, we got all these gangsters and thugs, RBG cats, that talk all this stuff. And you look north, south, east, and west, and you find nothing but hostile, white, heavily armed white communities completely surrounding black Chicago. Even in New York City, brothers and sisters, the homies and the stromies, all of y'all, you know what I'm saying? Tekashi 69 making videos with 1 million black gangsters. They all waving guns. Bobby Shmurda. They all waving guns in the video. But after the Crown Heights riots, after an Orthodox Jew killed a little black boy, Calvin Gato, in the streets, the Orthodox Hasidic Jewish community created a urban militia that is organized. They are stockpiling weapons right in the heart of Brooklyn. With the intent, they're not, and all these white people, you're thinking, oh, we're getting guns because it's my Second Amendment right. I'm arming myself to protect my liberty. White people have never used guns to protect their liberty. Right now, every single constitutional right, every single constitutional amendment, the entire Bill of Rights, except there's two, the Second Amendment that deals with your right to bear arms. And there's another amendment, I think it's the 6th, where the government cannot mandate you to provide shelter for troops, which is an obscure amendment that goes back to the time of British colonization. That means nothing now. Other than that, all other of the Bill of Rights, all 8 other, and you hear people, everybody, they're trying to take away my Second Amendment rights. When your right to legal search and seizure, unlawful, inhumane incarceration, free speech, freedom of association, all your other rights are being infringed. But all you care about is being able to buy your pea shooter. And it ain't because you're going to fight the government for tyranny, because if white people were stockpiling weapons to fight government and tyranny, they would have overthrew the government under Nixon. They would have stormed the White House when Nixon was president. They would have stormed the White House when Ronald. All these presidents violate your constitutional rights. They would have stormed the White House under Obama was violating. They would storm that White House right now. Trump don't give a damn about civil or human rights. They got those weapons to kill us. The average white man, when he goes to the store, he sees a Trayvon. He sees a LaQuinn McDonald. We are not safe here. And another thing that would tell you that we're not safe here is because you look at what white people are doing abroad. There is an orgy of mass slaughter all over this world. When we fought them off of us, it took us from the Jim Crow from the 1860s to the 1960s to stop the lynchings. I don't say stop the lynching, to reduce the lynchings. So they went to the Philippines. They went to Cuba. They went to Honduras. They went to South Africa. They didn't stop the mass slaughter. They didn't stop the lynching. They just outsourced it like they did our jobs. Go and buy Soldier of Fortune magazine. They still publish it. Go to the Soldier of Fortune. Just like Trump's sons go overseas to kill big game animals, killing jaguars and elephants in Africa. They don't stop with the animals. We have never been safe in this country. To quote Bobby Wright, we ain't never been safe in this country. And we were told by some of our most beloved leaders that we can non-violently resist this aggression, this genocidal aggression. We can non-violently resist, and through us allowing them to spit at us. And I just learned this not too long ago. After they bombed Dr. King's house, Dr. King went and applied for a gun permit, which he was denied. Did y'all know that? King wanted to strap up, and they wouldn't allow him to in America. Interesting. But anyway, we were told by our beloved elders that we could non-violently secure our rights. As they spat upon us, as they threw stones upon us, and they didn't just spit on us. They threw feces and urine on us. When they would train their attack dogs to attack the crotch, as Dr. Khalid Muhammad recounts, during the civil rights marches, yeah, we see the water hose being sprayed, but I guess they didn't want to show us the dogs ripping at the genitals, ripping at the breasts of black marchers. But we said if we allow them to do this and we don't strike them back, if we allow them to do this and we don't fight back, then it will awaken their compassion. It will awaken their humanity. That we could overcome them with our capacity to love and our willingness to suffer for what we believe in. That's what we were told. And since after all that, we got these civil rights reforms, LBJ sat across from Martin Luther King and Abernathy and the big six civil rights leaders and wrote up these rights. Now, he didn't write up the rights because all the rights we got in 1968, we had in 1868. So I don't know what the hell he called himself though. But we got the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, and other concessions. And we really believe for an entire generation we got this through marching and allowing them to spit, dehumanize, abuse us, and not fighting back. And then you look at all the history of the Black Liberation Army, Deacons for Self-Defense, Sankofa's book, We Will Shoot Back. Get that book. He was just here last year, gave a wonderful lecture on black armed resistance. That black people, we forget that black people during the so-called civil rights, nonviolent civil rights era, that black people had over 200 urban rebellions, uprisings, and burned these cities to the ground and damn near collapsed the global economy. We forget that that our brothers and sisters in the Caribbean, our brothers and sisters on the African continent were telling U.S. diplomats and dignitaries, don't try to come here and negotiate for our resources, and you can't even treat our people with basic human dignity. And when they went there and said, we'll go to the communists and trade with the communists and get weapons from the communists before we do business with you because of the way we see you treating black people in America. Now we want to ignore that and pretend like, oh, the blacks sold, the Africans sold us into slavery, and that was the end of our relationship, which is all lies. Fire bun DOS. Fire for DOS, man. I mean, I'm just done. I'm done debating. I'm done. It's a despicable. ADOS is utterly despicable. Fire for them. So we forget that our rights, our abilities, to which it is, it's not a full-on ability. It's not an absolute ability. But our ability to walk these streets, our ability to navigate this society is not a byproduct of our nonviolent resistance and the awakening of the humanity of white people. Our ability to dwell in this society without being lynched, molested, degraded, dehumanized, and attacked on a daily basis, not just by the cops, but by the average white citizen, is a direct result of the fact that they have some understanding to the fact that if they come to us in that capacity, we have the capacity and will to harm them as they have us. And now they know when they come to our communities, they got to have SWAT teams. They know when they come to harass us, they got to call better. I need to put in a call for backup, put in a call for backup. That's what allows us to have the level of mobility we have in this society. The fact that we said we'll burn this mother down. We don't need no water. Let the mother burn. Burn, mother effer, burn. That's the source of our freedom and security, mutually assured destruction. And it's not because we're violent, it's because they're violent. It's not because we dwell in mutually assured destruction. That's because that's the scenario and the conditions they created. And we have to operate off of their paradigm because they hold power, they oppress us. And any relief we've ever got came at the point of a gun. Mao was not wrong about that. That is not our nature. And if we wrote the Constitution, if we oversaw the judicial system, if we controlled the economy, if we controlled the means of production, there would be other terms and conditions through which we could negotiate. But this is not. Before you can have power, you need to seize power. So as we are out of power, we got to work with their fiat. We got to speak their language. We got to now I don't call this integration. I call this navigation. I'm not a big fan of the water. My children and wife, they love to swim, and everywhere we go, they want to get in the water. We go to California, they want to get in the water. We go to New York, they want to get in the water. We go to a hotel in Missouri, they want to go get in the damn pool. They always want to. I'm not a fan of the water because I know the water wants to kill me. It's not my friend, but I can't do without the water. But if you're in the boat in the ocean, you can't integrate. You don't have the capacity to live in the ocean. So you need certain artificial instruments like a damn boat and a paddle at least and a sail to navigate the water. And you have to navigate the water to get to dry land. And once you get to dry land, you can turn around at the shore and put your middle fingers up and say, screw you, water, you didn't get me. That's how we have to do in oppressive white society. We have to navigate it. We have to stay above it. We have to maneuver. And sometimes we have to use the very thing that's trying to kill us to help advance us. The water will drown you, but it can keep you afloat too. So I encourage that black people, we have to navigate this system, not in order to improve ourselves, not in order to integrate ourselves, but in order to subvert the system. Until we have amassed the social capital, until we have properly oriented and educated and enlightened our people, until the contradictions are at a state where we can engage in open conflict, we got to do this in a guerrilla method. Guerrilla warfare, guerrilla economics, guerrilla consciousness. And you're promoting violence. That has nothing. You're talking about race war. Number one, a race war cannot be started in the United States because you cannot start something that's in motion. If something is already ongoing, you can stop it, you can slow it, you can redirect it, you can reverse it. But you can't start something that's already been started. The United States has been waged a perpetual race war since the first black person got off the first boat on this shores. So whenever anybody comes up about, you're talking race war, or there's gonna be a race war, they are idiots. There is a race war right now. There was a race war yesterday. My great-grandfather was born into a race war, and his great-grandfather was born into a race war. There has been a perpetual race war. Saying I'm going to start the race war is like saying I'm going to start the Afghan war. The United States has been at war with the Afghan people in Afghanistan for almost 2 decades. So you can't start something. You can stop it. You can reverse it. You can even reprioritize your mission. But you can't stop it. So the race war in America, the tactics, the methodology, the terminology, and even the ultimate goals of the race war have been changed and manipulated, but the race war is perpetual. So we can't talk about starting or even stopping a race war in America. All we can say is, how will we respond? Will we engage the fight? Will we submit to the aggression? Will we join our oppressors in fighting against our own people? We have a lot of options, but one option we don't have is starting or stopping the race war. We can't start it because it's been going on long before we were born, and we can't stop it because we don't have control of the means of production and the institutions of the state. So we can only determine how will we engage this rage war: resistance, submission, or even cooperation. Those are the only 3 options you have. That's it. And I hate the fact that a lot of these RBG militants, guerrilla warfare, guerrilla consciousness, guerrilla culture, guerrilla protocol, guerrilla ideology, African worldview, African social theories, these things come way before the guns and can exist without the guns. Saying a man with a gun is a revolutionary is like saying a man with a penis makes him a father. Having a penis makes you a father. Or having sperm makes you a father. There's certain things you got to do. And find a woman to impregnate. And then after the baby is brought, there's certain things you got. There's a whole lot more than just having semen in the penis to being a father. And there's a whole lot more to being a revolutionary, being a guerrilla, than simply having guns. And I see my time is not on my side. So it looks like we're going to have to do Guerrilla Warfare 4.2. We will talk about the protocol, the culture, the ideology, tactics, and strategies, and the ultimate outcome for guerrilla warfare in the United States. Urban guerrilla consciousness, urban guerrilla lifestyle, guerrilla politics, guerrilla media, guerrilla conflict, and guerrilla self-defense. And what is the timeline and prospect for white people to stop with this person-to-person aggression? And when will they Civil War II? What are the specific, he talks about, I might have to do a 3-part show, because he talks about specific economic, political, and social conditions that will lead to the dissolving and fractionalizing. And what he anticipates is that the United States will be broken up into several ethnic enclaves, where various ethnic, racial, religious, and ideological groups will divide the country up, and the federal government will dissolve. And he talks about specific conditions for that to happen, and he talks about where it has happened historically and around the world to give you examples and markers to look for. And yes, he's a white, racist colonizer. But let me tell you something. You don't think they study Malcolm? You don't think the white man studied Malcolm? You don't think the white man studied Idi Amin? You don't think the white man studies his enemies? Revolution is a scholarly, intellectual endeavor. This is the Bro Diallo Show. Please, if you appreciate the work I do, the preparation I do, if you appreciate independent, well, I'm willing to say the truth. I'm only obligated to my supporters. I'm only obligated to my own principles and to the people. Therefore, I'm not getting no corporate sponsorship. I'm not even getting no grants or none of that. I need your support to stay on the air. This is not a vanity project. This is a service that I feel is valued, or I wouldn't be here wasting my time or yours. But I need your support. So please, go to the Bro Diallo website, diallokenyatta.com. You can make a one-time donation. You become a Patreon to help sustain us on the air, because if not for y'all, and y'all have helped me make this and heading into my 3rd year on the air, I appreciate y'all. And I will be here and do this work for as long as the people are willing to support me being here doing the work. Bro Diallo Show, Q4 Radio, AM 1680, iTunes app, TuneIn app, and q4.org. Check out diallokenyatta.com, and you can at Diallo Kenyatta across social media to get at me. And I'll see you guys Monday, and we'll be talking about Guerrilla Warfare Part 2.
Get a story, hey. I remember those days when hell was my home, when me and mama bed was a big piece of home, and me never liked baby.